Excellent. It looks like our numbers have stabilized. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined us for the webinar today. My name is Jack Keys, the International Program Manager for Innovation and Startups at the International Fertilizer Association, IFA, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar, which is focused on the green ammonia innovation ecosystem. A quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it's going to be posted on RMI's event page within 24 hours of the event. So we'll send that recording out to everyone who's registered, along with other resources and the contacts. During this webinar, we've set aside time at the end for questions and answers with our panelists. So please feel free to drop any questions that you might have into that live Q&A function. You may have the opportunity to have some questions answered during the session or live during the end of the session. Now, before we get into our today's panelists, I want to give you a quick reminder about your two host organizations today. IFA is the only global fertilizer association with a membership of around 500 entities in 80 countries around the world, encompassing all actors in the fertilizer value chain. Our IFA Innovation Unit is leading this webinar series alongside RMI, and we have several core activities, including an upcoming business startup competition, the launch of a specialized startup database, and our upcoming Cultivating Tomorrow conference in Barcelona, which is focused on all things innovation and sustainability. Our delivery partners for the webinar is RMI, an independent nonprofit transforming the global energy systems through market-driven solutions to ensure a clean, prosperous, and zero-carbon future for all. So RMI works in critical geographies to engage businesses, policymakers, and communities, and NGOs to identify and scale energy system interventions, which will cut climate pollution by at least 50% by 2030. Between IFA and RMI, this is the second episode of our series on a journey to a green ammonia future. And we set the scene, provided some background information and statistics in that first webinar, which you're very much welcome to go back and look out, which is also recorded on the RMI event screen. But for today, we have a fantastic lineup of presenters, and each of these presenters could probably entertain us for an hour themselves, but we're just getting a short taster of each on a quick fire tour through the innovation ecosystem. First up, as you can see on the screen in front of us, we have two presenters on the topic of innovating at scale. And we're going to start with Olivier from Atome. So without further ado, I'd like to pass straight on to you, Olivier, to introduce yourself and begin your presentation. Olivier, just to let you know, it doesn't seem like your sound's coming through yet, so could you just check that?
Very good. So now it's working.
Right.
Very good.
Thanks for checking that for the rest of the presenters. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So we have 7 minutes. It's not a lot of time, so we'll get straight into it, into the presentation. So hi everyone, Olivier Mussard, started as an engineer in the energy sector, then moved to finance, then to the World Bank. And since 2021, I was at the beginning of the story of Atome and its CEO. So Atome's story is a pretty, let's say, industrial story, a logical one, where we saw the hydrogen economy growing up. And why did people look at hydrogen? It was about decarbonizing chemicals, the hard to abate sectors. And it's not just about cars and hydrogen planes and so on. What you have to realize is that today hydrogen is the base molecule for a lot of activities. And in today's world, hydrogen is used into making steel, into refineries, and the large portion of hydrogen is used to make ammonia. And within the world of ammonia, 80% of all ammonia today is used to make nitrogen fertilizers. And so what we went about is, okay, how can we go and attack this sector at scale? Because the fertilizer sector and nitrogen fertilizer sector represents more emissions than basically all of the transport sector. We're talking about ships, we're talking about planes. And to make it at scale, you need a lot of renewable power. base load power, because these are chemical facility which will run 24/7, and also you need a market as well, and a fertilizer market. So we went about doing decentralized fertilizers. And so in here where you see the need for fertilizer, and this is kind of an interesting graph that we took out because people think about, well, we don't not only need chemical fertilizer, is you see that the growth of a population is directly correlated with the increase of hydrocarbon-based fertilizers, right? And that's quite an important sector to tackle. So if we go to the next slide in here, it's basically the opportunity and the impact of fertilizer, which means that if you can tackle the carbon footprint of fertilizer, you can take care of 50% of the carbon footprint of bread, 20% of barley, 20% of milk. And if I look at this, this is a can of Pepsi, if I can show it in here, right? 5% of that can carbon footprint is directly correlated to the use of fertilizer. So it's a super low-hanging fruit, extremely controllable. But the problem is we need tons and tons and thousands of tons of fertilizer a year. So if we go to the next slide, right? So the way to make green fertilizer and green calcium ammonium nitrate is basically by going to green ammonia. And the only difference between green ammonia and regular ammonia is the fact that the hydrogen you use as the base molecule comes from renewable sources. And as I mentioned earlier, the only way to do it at large scale is if you take a lot of baseload renewable power, green renewable power, and put it into the existing processes, which is what we are doing. If we can go to the next slide. So in our first project, which is in Paraguay, I think why Paraguay? It's because that's where you have the second largest hydroelectric dam in the world. And you're in the middle of the largest fertilizer import market, right? Think about Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina is the main breadbasket of the world today. And yet it imports 95% of its fertilizer from Russia, from Saudi, from the US. So you can do decentralized fertilizer at scale with the right environment, right? And I think you will hear later on the great stories of tellers who can do things, decentralized as well in a different way, in a different technological way. Our view is we don't take technology risk, we take existing technologies, but we do them at a very large scale and we develop them. And our first fertilizer is really about going calcium ammonium nitrate. It's about displacing urea with specialty fertilizers. So if we go to the next slide, so Villeta, which is our first project, and I need to say, at home, we are a publicly listed company, right? We are traded on the London Stock Exchange. And because of that, a lot of what I say now is available in a lot more detail on our website on atomplc.com. And when you will see basically a much longer presentation than here. And so if you see in this particular slide, it's basically our first project. So it's 145 megawatt of power. Which will feed a plant, which on the other end will produce about 260,000 tons of calcium ammonium nitrate per year. We're talking about displacing every single year over basically half a billion ton of CO2 per year. Right? So it's not nothing, it's not huge, right? But it's not nothing. And in this particular plant, the reality is we only address about 1% of the regional demand for fertilizer. So it is at the end of the day the first stone that you put in, and you grow from that, and you go on and you go on. So a lot of the people are asking, okay, why don't we do something bigger, more ambitious? Well, guess what? At this scale, this is already the largest plant which at the moment has gone through all of the front-end engineering and design, which is now going into detailed engineering, and that we are financing with the help of IDB, IFC, the World Bank, with Natixis as advisors. And also to make them successful, it's a story of partnership, right? Our partner is Ande, the power supplier, which are providing us with very low-cost base power. We're using Casale as contractor. As I said earlier, we don't want to use technology risk. I mean, we're doing things bigger when it comes to the hydrogen, but as far as a fertilizer plant, it's a pretty small fertilizer plant. Also partnering with Yara, so the fertilizer company, who will offtake 100% of our production on a very long-term basis, which is absolutely necessary to make this bankable. And in here, you see the ESIA consultant, Environmental Social Impact Assessment. It is very important for us that obviously these are projects with extremely high development impact, extremely high climate impact, but just because they are, doesn't mean that you shouldn't do things right from day one, because this plant is going to be for the next 25 years. So you need to manage communities, you need to manage the environments and so on. So and then the next slide. So this gives you an idea of what it means. So 145 megawatts of power, which will produce about 260,000 tons of fertilizer, displacing twice the amount of carbon. And if you can, according to our broker, I need to be publicly company focused, that's the potential to make about $110 million on year one of revenue. And at the same time, giving 90% of reduction of regular synthetic fertilizers, and at the same time, at the same price as imported gray fertilizers. Right? For us, we want to get the green premium, but you need to be competing without the need of a green premium and without the need of a carbon. So my time is gone. I will pass it on to the next speaker. As I said, everything is available on our website, so feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic, Olivier. Appreciate that, keeping to time and giving us a wealth of information. As he's mentioned, please feel welcome to take a look online, but also you're welcome to start putting some questions into the Q&A function. If you'd like to address specific panelists, please feel welcome to put their name first and then ask any question. But next up, we have our second presenter in this section of Innovating at Scale, which is Armin. So Armin, over to you.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you, Olivier, for the timekeeping. I will try to do my best as well. So I'm representing here Innovex. Here, Hydrogel is a subsidiary of Innovex. It's the subsidiary that is dedicated for developing green hydrogen and green ammonia projects, and we are working, in the ecosystem of OCP, one of also leader fertilizer company based out from Morocco and specialized in phosphate fertilizers. So if we move on, I think we had a bit of introduction into the perspective of why green ammonia and how it can really solve some of the hard to abate or sectors for decarbonization. Here I'm just putting in perspective that as the world needs more fertilizers, companies increase their production, and it goes through increasing production of phosphate rock in the mining to fertilizers. Here the twist is that for this wave of growth of OCP group, the aim is really to go hand in hand with a strong and profound decarbonization of this business. So we see here really an ambition of increasing renewable energy intake to fully decarbonize the existing operations, as well as solving water issues, as you know, operating from Morocco with the tension and water scarcity. This topic is definitely strategic here, and as well as the topic of the day, which is green ammonia. The really particular case of OCP is that it's consuming a lot of ammonia that is sourced today out from the markets, roughly 2 million tons per year, without producing actually a single drop of that ammonia, because the traditional ways of producing ammonia with the reforming of methane is not available in Morocco. So there is a huge opportunity here to convert part or full of that ammonia without actually having to address asset obsolescence here in Morocco. So maybe just to wrap up this ambition, we're talking about a 13 billion investment, of which 7 billion is largely dedicated to green molecules to address this challenge. Just a rapid explanation about Innovex in the next slide, please. So Innovex is a venture builder. So we are working very hard at creating actually new businesses, mostly around sustainability. So I'm not going to go too much in details here, but we do incubate and develop our own businesses, as well as investing, in dedicated vehicles when they are strategically aligned with our ambition. Three sectors mainly in agriculture and water, energy and chemicals. but as well with a large impact objective on social and leveraging a lot of digital in what we do. So maybe on next slide, a zoom on hydrogen. We can skip this one, please. So our two main projects that we are contemplating today is a project of 100,000 tons per year of green ammonia directly located in the, I would say, the heart of the chemical operations of OCP. That's in Georges-Lasval. So this 100 kilotons will be 100% taken by OCP and will support the decarbonization of part of those operations, but it serves also as a industrial and development platform for the large-scale ambition, which is multiple million tons of green ammonia that are being developed in the south of Morocco. So this first project is really, I would say, a stepping stone for us to validate the concepts, the technologies, but also, as was mentioned before, to embark with us key partners that will also support the large-scale projects. And the second one that is here illustrated is the Tarfaya project. That one is in the south of Morocco, where, as you know, they are very strong in good conditions for wind and solar that allow actually onshore to benefit from conditions that are way above what you would find elsewhere in the world. And that helps a lot, of course, to drive the competitiveness of such project. Maybe on next slide, there are a bit more details about the projects. So for George, it's a project that will be 100% sourced from the grid, from new projects that are coming online in terms of renewables. As I said, it is really a cornerstone of the full strategy in terms of development of green ammonia, because it helps also to support the testing of emerging technologies that are extremely promising in scaling up these operations. It helps also, integrate better between hydrogen, ammonia, as well as the management of intermittency. And by design, of course, this is all, designed to be compliant with the stringent requirements in terms of RFNBO signature for the hydrogen. As I said, it's uptaken by OCP, and the project financing is also supported by OCP so that we can really expedite the key learnings that we want to leverage from this project. Thank you. Next slide. The second project is down on the coastline in the south of Morocco, located in Tarfaya. So these projects with multi-gigawatts of renewables require a large asset in terms of land. We have already secured 100,000 hectares to be able to develop the renewable aspect of the project. So wind, we're talking about more than roughly 2.5 and a bit more of gigawatt of capacity of wind. We need also about 1 gigawatt of capacity of solar, and of course, managing intermittency still goes through the installation of batteries. The project is supposed to be commercial. It's supposed to serve OCP, but also address other international market needs. And therefore, it follows a full, I would say, diligence in terms of environmental impact, up to the standards for to make this project bankable and where lenders can find also a good, I would say, a balance of risks and reward on the project. I'm not gonna
Thank you very much,
time.
Amin. Yeah, just let you know we've got about 30 seconds left to finish up. Thanks.
I think I was done. So thank you very much. I'm happy to have questions later. Thanks.
Perfect, fantastic timing. Thank you very much. I mean, it's great to see those big numbers that you're putting up on the screen, the de-risking and what's happening with you and the team at Innovating. So I'm sure people are interested to find out more, and I can see several questions coming in the Q&A already. But with the end of that presentation, it brings us on to our next short section, which is our Startup Innovation Showcase. So if you thought those 7-minute presentations were going fast, the next ones are going to go even faster because we're down to 5 minutes per presenter, and a set of passionate presenters who I'm sure could speak for even longer. So I won't take up any more of their time, and I'll pass you straight on to our first speaker, Laurent.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Laurent Barros. I'm a chemical engineer and founder of Andrus Innovations, and we're working to build better reactors for ammonia production. Next slide, please. Our startup is spinning out of the University of Connecticut and has been honored with awards from MIT, Yale, and UConn, and we've been selected for prestigious programs like Activate and Third Derivative, which is connected to RMI. So we want to give a special thanks to our Third Derivative partners. Next slide, please. So like many of us in the green ammonia space, we see a great opportunity to decarbonize ammonia production and provide cost-effective local ammonia production, obviously with an idea to deliver a stable price, stable supply, and reduce transportation costs for farmers. I did my PhD on distributed ammonia production systems, and so I quickly figured out that there are 3 major things that need to happen for this to work. You kind of need production plants that are cost-effective, first, as an example. We then need plants that are small enough to supply a region, but not too small where the economics become unprofitable. And then you need a process that can withstand the quick starts and stops of these renewable power systems. Next slide, please. So then we looked at the Haber-Bosch reactor, which is the main way of producing ammonia. And doing some research, we found out that there's a lot of difficulties with scaling down this process to make it economical. And so we discovered ways to make ammonia a lot more competitive through a new process. Next slide, please. So what we found out was, first, if you can reduce the pressure of this reactor, you can make this more cost effective. And that's not a new finding. Many people have been trying for a long time to make ammonia production a lower pressure process, mostly through the use of exotic catalysts. But what we're doing is starting from the ground up with a whole new process to make ammonia at atmospheric pressure and low temperature. Next slide, please. Thank you. The way this works is a cyclical process. It's a thermochemical process where we first react a material with nitrogen, we fix nitrogen onto that material, and then we react it with hydrogen in the next step. And this is a cyclical process that repeats after we remove all the nitrogen. This produces ammonia at atmospheric pressure through a whole new set of chemistry. Next slide, please. And the technoeconomics of doing a process like this at small scale and low pressure essentially means that you can reduce the capital and operating cost of ammonia production because you're not having to compress a lot of gases to make ammonia at high pressure. You reduce your energy demand quite a bit. This is a published study that is linked below if others want to look at it. Next slide, please. So what this also does is, because we're taking nitrogen and hydrogen from any source, we're trying to be the most effective way of converting nitrogen and hydrogen to ammonia, which allows us to be flexible to the changing landscape of hydrogen. So geological hydrogen, for example, becoming more competitive, or electrolyzer-based hydrogen, which enables us to make ammonia and green ammonia from a variety of use cases. Next slide, please. And so to quickly wrap up, we've developed a new process that can produce ammonia at atmospheric pressure and low temperature. And before doing my PhD, I spent time operating power plants at scale. And so I understand the rigor that's needed to deploy an industrial product, which is why we're in the lab doing a lot of long-term tests on our catalyst and material. And we're preparing to scale up this reactor and do a demonstration. And these demonstrations will be out in the field where we can test this reactor for a long period of time and essentially connect a hydrogen source and a nitrogen source and start making ammonia for our industrial partners. If you're interested in being a demonstration partner or supporting an early stage startup like this in this space, please reach out to us through the QR code below or find us on LinkedIn or our website. Thank you very much, and I'll pause for time.
Brilliant, Laurent. Thank you very much for taking us through that. Again, perfectly on time, and some really exciting work that you've got going on, particularly with this next stage project. So thank you very much. Our next presenter is Hiro, who's from Talus Ag. And so we'll continue and pass straight over to you, Hiro. And Hiro, you're just on mute.
Yep.
And
Thanks,
there
Jack.
you are. Perfect.
Can we go to next? There we go. So we build modular green ammonia systems, and if we can control the slides. Next slide. The attraction, when we started looking at modular green ammonia, we really looked at it originally from a philanthropic basis. The biggest, one of the largest issues with ammonia, in addition to it being carbon intensive, is both its availability and volatile price in across geography. So if you look at farms in the developing world, a farmer in Africa, a farmer in a farmer in South America, a farmer in inland Southeast Asia pays anywhere from 2 to 6x for fertilizer as a farmer in the United States. And so our first green ammonia system already deployed last year in Kenya reduces the cost of fertilizer by 30 to 40% on an equivalent basis in many parts of the developing world. I think what differentiates us is we are actually moving. We're actually deploying systems now. So we deployed our system. We deployed our first system last year. We deployed our second system. We just deployed our second system into the United States. We're deploying a system into the EU now. That'll be online in March. And our larger system, which produces order of magnitude 7,000 tons of ammonia per, our larger module that produces 7,000 tons of ammonia per year will come online in the next couple months here in the US. All of our systems are under 10 to 15-year offtake agreements with large agricultural partners in the United States, mostly the large co-ops and the big ethanol companies. In the rest of the world, large commercial farms to start. Although obviously in many parts of the developing world, we're focused on being able to serve smaller holder farmers. One of the big keys is our systems are modular. We use generally industrially proven technologies. We have some innovations around our Haber-Bosch Synloop and our compressors, but I don't think that really matters. Ultimately, our agricultural, mining, and industrial partners are pretty straightforward. They want a ton of ammonia reliably and cost competitively. And we can do that in many parts of the world if you have expensive competing imports and relatively low cost renewable power, which we can get most places. Our systems are designed to run intermittently. And so when you think of some of the large scale plants for green ammonia, most of them require baseload power. Baseload power is tough to make green unless you have hydro. And in many parts of the world, relatively expensive. We can get, our average cost of power at our sites in the US are somewhere around $40 per megawatt. Our average cost of power in the rest of the world, some are $20 per megawatt and some are $50 per megawatt. But I think with those costs, we can deliver a product. We deliver products that are anywhere from 20 to 40% cheaper than the competing fertilizer. I think we've been spending most of our time focused on existing applications today. We also have an ammonia generator. We're working on a genset that will allow us to use the ammonia in addition to fertilizer for one of our on-site farms in Kenya. We may replace their diesel generator with an ammonia genset that is cost competitive or actually a little cheaper than the diesel that they import. But I think what's really important to remember is, and I think I saw some of the questions for some of the other presenters on the Q&A, how can you be cost competitive? There are two ways to be cost competitive today, and maybe one more way in the future. One way is, and what we really started focusing on markets where the cost of fertilizer is really expensive, right? So again, a farmer in Kenya pays double for fertilizer as a farmer in the United States. A farmer in Uganda or Rwanda pays probably 4x what a farmer in the United States might pay. So we are cost competitive because the cost to deliver that import is expensive. The other way we're cost competitive is we do get subsidies in some markets. And then the final way you can be cost competitive, excuse me, is in the future, a bunch of these other technologies can focus on lowering the cost of production. In the United States, we get a large subsidy, so we're 30% cheaper than the long-term average of ammonia in the Corn Belt. And so as a result of that, we have development projects across the world. We have a couple $2 billion now in LOIs in the United States and offtake agreements. Our focus areas right now are in Southern Africa, the United States, a project in Brazil, a project in Chile, a project in Indonesia, and then some of those projects will deliver into Europe. In the US, we have 78 sites that we have land control of and are advancing now. We expect to get to, by mid-2026, we expect to get to a point where we are delivering 3 of our larger systems per month, so order of magnitude 20,000 tons of annual ammonia capacity per month. So that's actually that actually starts to be a meaningful amount of ammonia for these regions.
Hello, just yeah,
project.
you can wrap us up in 30 seconds if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yep, nope. We are so this is our project in Iowa, our first project in the US. It's online now. 30 miles up the road from that, there's a bigger project that's coming online in a couple months. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Great to see the progress that you've been making and the direction that you're heading as well. And thank you for proactively answering some of the questions already and being able to explain a little more on that cost competitiveness angle. Next up, and our third speaker in the Startup Showcase is Rune from Into Applied. So I'll hand straight over to you, Rune. You're just muted at the moment, so you should be able to click that yourself and then over to you. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Rune Ingens. I'm the founder and CTO of Into Applied. But my background is from the fertilizer industry. I worked 30 years for Yara, starting as a process engineer in a 100 megawatt green ammonia NPK plant in Norway, ending up as responsible for technology and licensing strategy. Before I went out and started my own company together with a partner, and we are today 60 people. And we are the only supplier of a commercial green plasma nitrate technology. And I say it's a technology. It's a technology with a broad spectrum of applications. So please, next one. The key to our technology development is the reactor up in the left corner. It is a reactor built for the future. It has the features of the technologies that BASF and Norsk Hydro at that time built 120 years ago. And that is our part of our proprietary equipment. It's the reactor, it's the power supply, and it's the control of energy and steam production. If you go down, you see that our IPR is today more or less 100% containerized in the commercial units that we are now selling in partnerships. In this container, there are space for all kinds of applications. And interesting is that one of the first licensors for our technology was GEA, a supplier of milking robots. Because if you look at the CO2 footprint of the food chain, Haber-Bosch is less than 10% of it. The rest of the CO2 footprint is from dairy farming, it's from livestock, it's from fertilizer applications, it's waste handling, etc. So we targeted the nitrates and making nitrate. And if you take the next please, because from the fertilizer industry, you will see that the nitrate is a value enabler. It is bringing up the value of ammonia. Ammonia was a commodity intercontinentally traded, and it had almost the same price in when we didn't have wars in the Gulf. It had almost the same price all over the world. Shipping, but the end product nitrate lifted the value of the nitrogen, and you see the value of the nitrogen in the nitric acid is $5,000 versus $400 for the ammonia that you take into a fertilizer site. But The most important thing is that with the nitrates, you can recycle. Next, please. The world is full of nutrients that can be recycled on the farm, in the food chain, etc. And we saw and we see that if you have nitric acid, nitrates, or NOx gas, you can upgrade this to a fertilizer value that is higher and better than most other nitrogen fertilizers, and you get the benefit of all the other nutrients that is normally available in the waste. So typically we have organic waste, more than enough. We have mineral waste, more than enough. There is more than enough waste in the world that we can convert to nitrates to replace 100% of the Haber-Bosch. That will not be done, but the potential is there, just as a curiosity. Well, how does a nitrate technology compete or complement or function in the fertilizer industry? I've taken an example here. Don't pay too much attention to the figures, but the important part is that energy doesn't disappear. And with the green ammonia or imported blue ammonia, you get some energy, but you also need extra energy for evaporation and for producing the ammonium nitrates and the finished fertilizer. So if you look at how our technology fits in, we see that at 25 kilowatt hours per kilo of nitrogen, it's competitive to all the other alternatives before you start to talk about 10 times higher reduction of CO2 footprint from all the other alternatives. Next, please.
I'll just ask, Rune, we're starting to get short on time, so we'll give you 30 seconds
Very good.
to finish up. Thank you.
Very good. That was the plan. We are a technology and licensing company. We need partners. We offer our technology to partners, and starting with the plasma generator can fit into several systems. Licensing element, we can produce nitric acid. We are now running a pilot here just behind me, and we are already above 50% 40% nitric acid. Maybe we need to go to 60, but not necessarily for the distributed local solutions. Next, please. We are also scaling up, and together with Yara, they are supporting us on process design and energy utilization. And we are now producing, scaling up our technology and making it suitable for a broad spectrum of applications. Some of these applications would be ammonia water from ammonia scrubbing in industry. It would be all kind of livestock slurries. It would be calcium oxides, minerals, etc. And the plan is to end up in 2026 to build the first of a kind calcium nitrate production. Calcium nitrate is one of the most interesting nitrate fertilizers. It's very much used for cash crop and high value crops where you used in greenhouses, etc. So we cannot compete head on against green ammonia, because green ammonia is not a fertilizer. It is something that you need to convert to something, except a few places in the US, where they use it directly. But we compete on the distributed production in containerized solutions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rune. That's brilliant. I appreciate it. And just a reminder, everyone, to keep those questions coming through in the Q&A. I can see a lot of being answered along the way, which is fantastic. And we'll save some for the end as well. Thanks, Rune.
Thank you.
Our final speaker to transition to accelerating innovation is from Third Derivative themselves, and we have David with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to pass on to David before we transition to the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. So my name is David Henick. I'm a senior associate at RMI, and I lead research and diligence at Third Derivative, RMI's startup accelerator program for a number of industrial sectors. And today I'll be talking about our work to accelerate innovation in green ammonia. Slide, please. So you've seen the versions of these slides throughout the presentations that have been excellent so far. Just to reiterate, stating our population today would be impossible without synthetic fertilizers. Maybe some fun numbers are, today we need about 1.5 billion hectares of farmland to feed our population. But if we were still producing fertilizer at 1908 yields, that would be about 3.9 trillion hectares of farmland. That's about 1,000 times the current forested area available on Earth and 26 times the total land surface area of the Earth. So synthetic fertilizers, if you didn't know, are very important. Next slide, please. So some of you may have seen this slide before. This is a planetary health check from the Planetary Boundaries Association. And as you can see, we're not doing too great on a number of metrics. If we zoom in on just planetary boundary specific to fertilizer, we can see that we've already gone past the phosphorus and nitrogen boundaries, and continuing in a business as usual way could result in ecological disruption, contamination of soil and water, and irreversible changes to the biosphere. We've talked about the carbon intensity of ammonia today a bit, but to just put it in perspective, we make about 200 million tons of ammonia per year, resulting in 620 million tons of CO2 per year. And this makes this more emissive than steel or cement on a per ton basis. Continuing as usual would result in about 2.3 gigatons of CO2 produced from ammonia alone by 2050. Next slide, please. And so at their derivative, we believe that innovation can help to reduce emissions for ammonia. You've seen a lot of great solutions so far in these talks, and this list is completely non-exhaustive, but just includes some innovations we've seen that we think highly of. So some non-green ammonia specific companies that we'll want to note are those targeting sort of the inputs and growing phase of crops to reduce usage. Innovations targeting storage and transport, which can reduce food waste, processing and manufacturing emissions like heating or cooling, as well as alternative proteins, and retail innovations that can connect farmers to customers and other businesses. Our primary focus at D3, oh, sorry, previous slide, please. Thank you. Is on the technological inputs. So today we'll highlight two great green ammonia companies. You just heard about Andros, but we'll also talk about Amobia, another low capex flexible process. And we also know that we've supported a number of hydrogen innovations at their derivative. So two in particular are Aurora Hydrogen and Power to Hydrogen. They both produce low carbon turquoise and green hydrogen respectively, which help reduce the emissions of hydrogen production and enable low carbon ammonia production. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows that distributed green ammonia in a lot of circumstances can potentially be cheaper, more flexible, and subject to less volatility than conventional ammonia production. Today, U.S. farmers in the Midwest pay a lot more for their ammonia than it costs to produce, and this is primarily due to transportation and storage. Some great analysis at RMI shows that by being decentralized, distributed ammonia production can take advantage of being able to scale with local renewables, and it'll also allow consumption to take place close to production, which just reduces costs overall for end users. Next slide, please. We're not going to go through this slide in depth. Many of the solutions talked about so far fit into sort of this matrix. But just to give an overview, there are several promising technologies we've identified that can help reduce the emissions for green ammonia. Most of these production pathways, are probably more expensive than incumbent solutions today. But for the vast majority of them, there are well-researched cost reduction pathways, through efficiency improvements that can allow these technologies to reach cost parity with traditional production methods. And more importantly, the solutions that we have labeled in green, they're all decentralized, allowing for more flexible deployment. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, their derivative is helping to scale two startups. You heard about Andros. Amobia is another low capex startup doing a Haber-Bosch 2.0 process. The whole selling point is reducing the amount of back-end infrastructure that's traditionally needed in Haber-Bosch by working at lower temperatures and pressures. Next slide, please. We really think that this is an exciting time to be in the ammonia space. Others have talked about this, so we won't belabor it, but we expect traditional ammonia usage and fertilizers and other uses to expand. And we expect to see the addition of additional sectors in shipping, as a hydrogen carrier, as a power generation asset, to come into play by 2050. And these uses will scale with renewables, which will allow for the large scale production of green ammonia, we believe. And there's also the productivity imperative. Most population growth is going to happen in African and Asian countries. And these countries have the lowest productivity yields to date, making it very imperative to develop solutions to help them grow their populations and feed populations sustainably. Next slide, please. Third derivative, we try to help startups by bridging the so-called valleys of death. Our current sweet spot is a valley of death number 2 that sort of spans between startup spin-out to the product development stage. So that's like TRL6, startups looking for a pilot. We've also recently started to branch out and develop collaborations with a number of venture builders, Activate, Deep Science Ventures, Marble, and have also developed a project finance accelerator for later stage innovations in Mark 1, along with Deep Science Ventures and RMI's projects team. Next slide. This is an example of how we accelerate climate tech that I will probably skip for now in the interest of time. But if you're interested in how we support startups, please do follow up with us. I'm happy to talk about it and talk more about their derivative, RMI, and our work in trying to accelerate innovation in green ammonia and sectors beyond. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, David. Thank you very much. And what a great way to finish off this series of presentations today, talking about how we can continue to accelerate and the optimistic outlook for the future. It's not often you get the opportunity to listen to 6 different presentations within about 45 minutes. And so we've done very well. I want to thank my presenters here for doing a fantastic job. I feel like it's been incredibly action-packed, and I think testament to that is the fact that our attendee numbers have stayed right up consistent across almost the whole call. So thank you for those that are engaging and interacting as well. We do have many questions, but not many minutes. And so I'm going to dive straight into this as we've got all of our presenters up on screen now, and ask a few questions to the presenters, but also please feel welcome to keep putting them in the Q&A. And I'm going to come to you first, Olivier, because we had quite a lot of questions about costs, credits, and subsidies. And I've seen you've entered some questions and some answers in the chat, but I want to give you the opportunity to just share a few key points to the audience on that.
No, thank you for that. And yes, that's the benefit of being first. I was able to answer some questions. So indeed, I think the way we looked at it is what are the advantages of some emerging markets in order, because we know that if you're going to do a project in Paraguay or in Brazil, it will be very difficult to have the type of subsidies you can get from the IRA with 45V or Europe, the European Green Deal, right? So what are the advantages you can really leverage locally? And it's about having the right type of power, the right price of power, being in the right market. From, as you heard from Hero, that at the end of the day, you have farmers which have to pay an incredibly high cost for fertilizer. So it's mix and matching, and the reason for that is obviously this is let's call it my IFC World Bank background, which is I hate subsidies as a period because they last for one presidential term. You never know where you are, and we have 25-year projects, right? So you cannot basically count on bankability on just subsidies. So it really was about making sure that we could develop first-in-kind projects with a minimum amount of subsidies, and it comes by doing things the way you finance infrastructure projects. That said, clearly, it's not the same pool of capital, and it's not that we don't have to fight extremely hard for equity. It has been difficult. But at the same time, it's all about, the way that we see sustainability. It's not just about environmental sustainability, it's also basically financial sustainability, right? Because if you need subsidies for 20 years, you're not a business, you're a charity, right? It's as simple as that. And also we've seen a lot of promises on the carbon markets, and honestly, we're still waiting. And you'd ask, people who've been pushing ammonia projects in Australia, in Namibia, and so on, they're still struggling to find that massive scale off taker. All right. So which is why the fertilizer market itself, at least it's a real market that exists today, which has real need. You are basically buying a end product, so it has an inherent premiums attached to it. So it's a long answer to say that, yes, we've considered it in our business plan, and we saw that, you know, there are difficulties to work in emerging markets, but also there are advantages attached to them.
Thank you very much, Olivier. I'm going to pivot straight over to Amin, where we had quite a few questions about market access and the market opportunities that you see for your project. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a few details on target markets.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I had the question, I found it extremely interesting. The first one is, you know, what's the, you know, it seems like the word is going for large scale, medium scale, small scale. I think it's quite relevant to signal here that, I mean, in my opinion, we need all the options on the table, definitely, because we are not addressing, you know, a single problem. We're actually addressing many problems for which we need many solutions. Now, coming back to the large scale production, it comes with a lot of difficulties, as you know, because the technology is still, you know, if you take it piece by piece, it seems mature, but the integration of all those pieces is actually creating a new type of, I would say, ways of designing and operating in this industry. Now, the fundamentals are extremely strong because it was reminded that to decarbonize fertilizers one way or the other, we have to go through that route. And also the fundamentals, of course, of the opportunity being located in an area where renewable power is extremely strong, available, and land to be able to develop such a large-scale projects is also definitely a constraint. That being available allows really to scale up very quickly and to address markets that are starting actually to develop, both in terms of regulation, and we'll see again, political aspects can also slow or accelerate these regulations. But there is definitely, from a technical standpoint, a better understanding about what decarbonizes and what not, and how, you know, the product should look like. And those fundamentals are not going to change because they are based on basic physics, right? So we can slow them or accelerate them, but ultimately, you know, they are based on pure physics. So we are very confident that, you know, that market is going to get into motion. And as we are developing this industry, scaling up, bringing down cost, this will definitely open up, you know, opportunities for companies that are serious about decarbonization. So our only goal today is make sure to support OCP in its venture. That's definitely the first case, but also that our products are compliant with the regulations that have been developed. So that would create basically the opportunity for companies who are willing to start decarbonizing with this vector to hop on the journey. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I mean, we've got a few questions for our startup presenters as well. So I'm going to come to you, Laurent, first. Having experience with operated and scale in the past in your career, we've got a couple of questions about what you see as the biggest challenges to scaling Andros.
Yeah, the biggest challenge really is you're trying to develop new technology and then develop it and deploy it into a commercial scale. Basically, the industrial and commercial clients are interested in long-term performance, a lot of assurances for this new technology. And so what we want to do right now is to figure out ways to, you know, test this catalyst for a long term and ensure the stability before we deploy a large-scale reactor. We just have to bring more confidence in the data from our testing.
Thank you, Laurent. I'm sure it's a stage that you're getting very excited about now. Hiddo, we also had a question for you, which I think you began answering during your presentation, but if you could expand on why you're developing in the US and EU versus the high opportunity markets that you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the short answer is we're developing them both, right? And I think each presenter has effectively addressed this question in different ways. But how can you deliver a cost competitive product for each local market? Right. There are some markets where we will not be cost competitive, right? In a large developed world market with no subsidies, it's just not an attractive market for us. unless it's just on the sustainability piece of it. But our focus is how do we lower the cost of fertilizer and access to that reliable fertilizer for local farmers. Local still, tens of thousands of acres, so still relatively large farms right now. But we do that because our CapEx is, our manufacturing partner and one of our large investors is a global auto OEM. So we can manufacture our systems much more rapidly, much more reliably than current green ammonia projects. Our deployments are 6 to 9 months. Our cost per ton of capacity is 30 to 40% cheaper than competing projects. And so our focus is, how do we deliver a ton of the only thing that matters to us is, can we deliver a ton of ammonia that's cost competitive to that customer that wants it? And we only deploy systems under 10 to 15 year long fixed price offtake agreements. And we have that in the U.S. and we have that we have that in Eastern Africa. We have that in Southern Africa. We have that with some of the mining companies in South America now. And so the point is, how do we have to look at each piece of our cost to figure out how to be cost competitive, and we do that. But coming back to the original question, we are deploying both in the U.S. and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Hiro. And Rune, I know that we answered quite a few of the similar questions through your presentation. So with 2 minutes left, I'll fire one last quick question to David, which is, Amin mentioned an answer to this one as well, but to help us finish setting the scene, what is the way that you see the future scale for green ammonia? Small, medium, large, or a combination?
I think I'll somewhat defer to a lot of the presenters here so far. I think we're pretty bullish on distributed solutions, given the amount of potential challenges with storage and transport, being able to co-locate. We have some pretty good reporting on that at RMI, and encourage others to check that out. But it's definitely going to be a mix, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, David. And another big thank you to all of our presenters. For those who joined us along the way, just a quick reminder that at IFA, you can learn more about our upcoming activity on LinkedIn, International Fertilizer Association, or at fertilizer.org. And a reminder about RMI, our co-hosts today. Their experts are working with the advice industry around the world, including working closely on green hydrogen, green ammonia, and other critical feedstocks for the fertilizer sector. So we're thrilled to be partnering with them in this webinar series with future webinar episodes to come. So if you want to get in touch with any of our presenters, you're welcome to do so. The webinar will be recorded and distributed to everyone who's registered. And so thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure to have you. Thanks.